What is going on, YouTube? This is Jim back with another video, and today I want to give you guys my review of Celeste. Celeste is a platforming game made by Matt Makes Games. It came out in January 2018. If you have the Xbox Gold, you can play it for free right now on your Xbox One, or in my case, the Xbox One X. I have to say, this game is phenomenal. And I'm one of those people that when I hear a lot of people praise something, I immediately want to dislike it because that's just the kind of person I am. And I want to start poking holes in it and flaws in it. And there really aren't any. It is an amazingly addictive platforming game that is very grueling and very punishing, but also very fair. And that's what I really appreciated about this game. The controls are extremely tight. So when you make a mistake, and you will make mistakes, it's on you. It's not the game with input lag or any gotcha mechanics. There's none of those in the game. It is purely on you. And every time you die, you just restart back at that beginning of the level and you work your way through. Now, you're going to die a lot. There's a kill counter in the game to show you just how many times you died. I believe I was over 1,000 by the time I wrapped up my playthrough of the first 7 worlds. I did not collect all the ancillary stuff to unlock the core level. I probably won't go back and do it because I had a hard enough time getting through the game on its own. I don't necessarily need to do all that extra challenging stuff, but it's there if you want it to be, and there's a lot of cool speedrun stuff about it online, and there's a lot of modifiers you can do with the B side and C side where it modifies the levels to make them even more challenging, where you can do modifiers like low gravity and that sort of thing. So there is a lot of replayability in this game if you want there to be. I never thought I would say that this game, a platforming game, could have such a strong, impactful, heartfelt message, but it really does. And I think that if you took that story element out of the game and just said, hey, we're making this platform game where you have to have a character move up to the summit of a mountain, it probably wouldn't have been nearly as fun. I think the fact that there is a story involved, and it's a very simple story, but a very heartfelt story, I think because of that, it makes the game even more rewarding. And I really did like and invest in Celeste. I wanted to see her succeed. And when she had her downfalls and when she was struggling through things, it was time to sort of reflect on things that I had been going through. And having a cool way the game ends, I'm not going to spoil it for you, but it's satisfying. And it's like, you know what? That's actually really, really cool. I appreciate that. And I really did enjoy it. I think what also helps the game so much is that there's a really great soundtrack in the background. It kind of reminds me of this 80s techno-y kind of soundtrack, but it's very mellow. It's not one of those kind of things where you're going to hear it at a dance club where it's a very high BPM. It's very slow and methodical, but relaxing, and I like that. It's one of the few soundtracks in games that I would really like to go back and listen to again. You know, I get a lot of these collector edition games that come with soundtracks, and some of them turn out to be more epic than others. But this is definitely one that I'm going to put on a playlist and listen to again because I really did enjoy the music. What else could I say about this game? I don't want to give too much away. It's a platforming game that relies on using dashes and climbing. There's a stamina meter, so if you climb too much, you fall down and you most likely die. You have to chain jumps and chain dashes together in order to get through some very simple, which ultimately become very complex levels. Game of the Year candidate. I've heard a lot of people ask me and tweet me, and I've seen a lot of comments on social media. Is Celeste the Game of the Year candidate? It's definitely one to be talked about. It's an indie game, so obviously it's going to have a smaller budget. It's going to have a much smaller scope. It's very difficult to compare to a game like Red Dead Redemption 2 or God of War when you're looking at the budget and the detail that went into those games versus the budget and the detail that went into Celeste. Doesn't mean an indie game can't be a game of the year. I appreciated the experience. I really enjoyed the story. But I don't think it's a game of the year candidate. And I feel like a lot of times we end up as fans trying to put this dark horse into the Game Awards or into the Game of the Year discussion, but ultimately it never wins. This is probably the quote-unquote sacrificial lamb for this year's Game Awards. It was nominated for those prestigious Game of the Year candidates numerous times, and as far as I can recall, I do not think it won on any of them. But do not discount this game. It was really, really good. I think what makes this so interesting is playing it just after Hellblade: Senua's Sacrifice, a game that I am absolutely in love with. The way that Hellblade tackled such a detailed, in such a detailed way, it handled such a difficult topic of somebody with a mental disability and a mental handicap. Celeste takes a similar approach on a little more lighthearted story, more in terms of self-doubt and in self-denial, being scared of things and being scared of change, but finds a way to narrate a very good story that has a satisfying ending. So it's interesting that two games that are on the complete opposite end of maturability and gameplay and darkness and cussing and blood and sweat and tears versus pixels, upcoming, upbeat music, a little bit more slower gameplay. Very interesting. 2018 was a very interesting year. So if I had to give Celeste a rating on a scale from 1 to 10, 1 being the worst game I ever played, 10 being the best, I would have to give Celeste a solid 8. The latter half of the game, and I mean latter half, I mean really the last 2 levels, to me, that's where the mechanic shines the most. Something happens in the game that makes you play the game very differently than you did before. And I think the level design and the gameplay and the spontaneity of a level really is benefited by that changing mechanic. Up until that point, it's very clear what you have to do, okay? It's very clear you have to jump here, boost here. There's not really a lot of give or take. There's not really a lot of creativity. I feel like in the last portion of the game, I was able to completely bypass areas by doing very complex jumping patterns, by, I wouldn't say manipulating the game by any stretch of the imagination, but putting my own spin on the advancement of the level because of that game-changing mechanic. And I think had that been in the game earlier on, this game would have definitely gotten a 9 from me. And I think then you might have been able to consider it more in line with a Game of the Year candidate, only because the gameplay was that much better. And it's not to take away from what the first 6 levels end up being. They are fun, they are challenging. But once you play the last 2 levels and you go back and look at the first 6, it definitely kind of falls apart a little bit, I think. And I think it definitely gets knocked down a peg. But definitely a great game. Definitely one I would highly recommend to check out, especially if you have Xbox Gold. It's free. You definitely need to. But even if you don't, if you're playing this on Switch or your PlayStation or your computer, I think this is one not to pass up. The name of the game is Celeste. Hope you guys enjoyed the review. Thank you guys so much for watching. And until next time, I will see you guys on the other side.